guys, today we are going to review the Israeli FN FAL. This is Israel's first auto-loading rifle. So that the original weapons that Israel was using right after independence were basically, for the most part, a mixture of old British weapons that were left over from the time of the British Mandate, and then World War II era German weapons that were sold to Israel by the Czechs. So Czechoslovakia in 1948 was the only country willing to sell military hardware and weapons to Israel, because don't forget there was an embargo then on the warring parties during the War of Independence, 1948, 1949, and only the Czechs were willing to do that. So they sent a lot of Mauser 98Ks and other German hardware. And so in the early days, that's what Israel was armed with, was a lot of Mausers and a lot of Stens and some Tommy guns and things like that. But this is already the 1950s, and these are really becoming quickly outdated weapons. So the IDF decides to upgrade to a new, more modern weapon, an auto-loading weapon. And one of the most popular, newest designs at the time was the FN FAL. The British, the Belgians, the Australians, Canadians, a lot of other countries were adopting this weapon at the time, and so the Israelis, they checked out a few different designs, and they settled on the FAL. So FN Fabrique Nationale in Belgium was contracted to produce these rifles, but the Israelis wanted them a little different. They didn't want the original FAL design. They asked to have it designed to accommodate the IDF specs. So if you look at this Israeli, this is an Israeli FN FAL, and you'll notice some differences here compared to some of the other FALs, some of the Belgian, the British, Canadian, Australian, South African, Rhodesian, etc. They don't look exactly the same. They work pretty much the same, but there were some cosmetic and minor mechanical differences in this. Now, namely, one thing you'll notice, the Israeli version does not have a flash hider. So that makes the weapon a little bit shorter, which is kind of nice. There's also the heavy barrel version. This is the light barrel version, which was issued to infantry soldiers. There was also the heavy barrel version, which was a light support weapon. You know, like a light, an LMG sort of, that was issued to the squads. So this is really a really amazing weapon. The Belgians are known to manufacture very, very high quality weapons going back a very long time, and this is no exception. This is a 7.62 by 51 millimeter round, so this is powerful. This is not a weak round. This is not by any means a 22 or a 9 millimeter. This has got a lot of stopping power right here. And this is at the time was and still is a NATO standard round. That 7.62. It's got good accuracy to the very long range. It was very successful in IDF service for a long time, but it did have one downfall, which was that it was not the most rugged weapon in the world. It was kind of susceptible to dirt and grime and sand, and the Israelis that were using this in the desert were not happy. If you're guarding the Suez Canal and there's just sandstorms that are blowing, and you got all this grime coming into your ejection port, and clogging your barrel and your mechanism, you're not going to be very happy, especially when the enemy is armed with AKs that don't really jam. So the Israelis did start to phase this out after the Yom Kippur War, 1973. After that, they upgraded to the Galil, and they were given a huge amount of M16s by the United States. So after that, this started to get phased out. But for the time that it was in service, from the early 50s and all the way until and into like the mid-70s, it did have a lot of success. It was used successfully in multiple conflicts. This was used in the Six-Day War. There's a lot of footage of this weapon being used, of the paratroopers liberating the old city of Jerusalem This was used in the Golan Heights campaign against Syria. This was used again in the Sinai Desert against the Egyptians. That was probably the most problematic front, was the Sinai front, because of all the dust and grime. It was much more successful in its use in the Jerusalem front, West Bank, and also in the north against the Syrians. But it is a great weapon. I mean, again, if you're not using it in really adverse conditions, it's really awesome. There are a lot of countries in the world that are still issuing these to their troops, the FN FALs. The British used FALs against the Argentines in the Falklands War in 1982. Ironically, the Argentines were also armed with a different version of the FAL. And a lot of British soldiers really regret that they transitioned away from this to that really obnoxious British bullpup that they still issue now. But I gotta say, I like this weapon. I think it's something that more American shooters should look into. The FAL is considered, for the most part, very much of a European weapon. It is, but more Americans should really look into it. So let's talk about how this works. So this was pretty revolutionary in that it has a left-hand charging handle. So a lot of guns today have that. The charging handle here is on the left. Nowadays we kind of take that for granted. But back then, a lot of guns were charging from the right, and this is really an awesome design. I really like this. You got your selector switch over here. You've got the Hebrew letters Aleph, Nun Sadeh, and Bet. So Aleph stands for automat. You can imagine what that is. Nun Sadeh is Natsur, which means safe, and Bet is Bodedes, which is semi-auto. I will tell you, this is a weapon you probably are only going to want to fire on semi-auto. This has got quite a bit of recoil. It is a 308, and it is a 7.62, that is. And I wouldn't want to start shooting this in full auto. This particular rifle is a semi-auto only, to accommodate federal laws. But if it had the full auto capability, I don't think I'd be using it at all. And from what I understand, from what I'm getting from a lot of IDF veterans who did use this in combat, nobody was ever going to use it in full auto. It was uncontrollable. Your first shot may be on target, but by your third shot, fourth shot, you're going anti-aircraft. So, yeah, I wouldn't advise that. But the ergonomics on this are really nice. It's got some wooden hardware that your buttstock and your handguard are wood, and then the pistol grip is it's plastic. It's got a very, very nice, crisp, smooth trigger, very light trigger. It's got adjustable sights, front and rear. It's got a carry handle. So this is kind of cool. This is something that they thought would be advisable to have on the weapon. I don't know to what degree it was actually employed, but I did see a lot of footage where the soldiers were carrying their weapon using the carry handle. It does have the sling swivels are bottom sling swivels, although the front sling swivel is adjustable, which is really cool. So what I saw a lot of footage from soldiers doing is attaching the sling from the rear sling swivel and attaching it over here so they could carry it, combat carry over the neck rather than over the shoulder, which is the way it was designed. Although this is the way that most soldiers would be carrying it, is over the shoulder. The classic way that military rifles were carried at the time. It takes 20-round magazines. These are pretty good, pretty solidly made. IDF issue. You know that these are original IDF magazines because it has a little Hebrew marking over here, which these two letters, which refer to Ta'asiyat Tzva'it, which means the military industry, military factory, IMI factory, which is where this was manufactured. There's a lot of Israeli markings all over this gun. So the marking over here, it says רובה מטען FN 7.62 מספר 1 סימן א'. So that's Hebrew for FN autoloading rifle number 1, type A, and it's got the crest of the IDF over here. It's a really comfortable gun to shoot. It's really, really comfortable. and very, very, very nice, very smooth. So the Israeli soldiers, when they were going into combat, they would wear this kind of web gear. You'd have these kind of pouches here for magazines. This is where you'd be storing your magazines in these kinds of pouches, as such. So they'd have multiple pouches for their magazines, and they would carry that on their over their uniforms. This is the way they'd be armed, And I've got some original IDF issue helmets over here, so they'd be wearing one of these helmets, and they'd be having this kind of web gear, and this would be their rifle. Magazines load like this, lock in, the mag well locks in such, cocks back, release, and aim in, fire. Overall, I really love it. I really love it. It's an awesome weapon, and I can't say anything bad about it. Let's try this out. Let's go to the range. That was fun. Let's do another magazine. Man, woo! Surprisingly light recoil for something that heavy hitting. Very surprising. Whew. I'm gonna do this one from the kneel. Awesome. That is awesome. Whew. I'm going to do this in the prone now. That was awesome. I gotta tell you, I really loved shooting this gun. I was expecting a lot more recoil than it was. It did recoil, don't get me wrong, but it was very manageable, and I didn't have any jams. It was very smooth to fire. The trigger was amazing. It's got a very nice, crisp, light trigger, and I feel very confident with this gun. I definitely think if you're in the market for a good military rifle, something that's battle tested, and you're not necessarily using it in the worst desert conditions, I would suggest this. I think going with an Israeli FN FAL is not a bad idea. These are pretty hard to find guns, and they're not cheap. So if you're in the market for one, it's not necessarily going to be easy to find. You're going to have to do some looking, and you might have to pay a pretty penny. But if you do come across one, I strongly recommend it. I think this is an awesome, hard-hitting weapon. You're certainly not going to be missing out in terms of stopping power. There's no question about that. Would I use this as a home defense gun if I live in an apartment building with paper-thin walls? Probably not. But for open terrain, long range, hell yeah. Hell yeah, this is something that I feel very confident with. So, hey guys, I hope you liked this video. I know I did. Man, shooting this was fun. Make sure to subscribe, give us a like, and I'll see you in the next video.